the early hours of June 16, 2009, a father and son arrived at Ross's Point Beach in County Sligo. Sea fog still hung over the shore. The tide was out. It should have been an ordinary morning. Instead, they found the body of an unknown man lying face down on the sand near the rocks, close to the slipway. At first glance, it looked like a drowning. A man had apparently gone into the water and never come back. But almost immediately, small details began to feel wrong. He was dressed oddly for a swimmer. The scene was too quiet, too clean. And before long, investigators would realize this was not just an unexplained death. It was the beginning of one of Ireland's strangest modern mysteries. The dead man wore purple striped swimming trunks, navy underpants over those trunks, and a navy t-shirt tucked into them. On his wrist was a waterproof watch. For a man supposedly heading into the sea, it was peculiar attire. He looked like someone between identities, halfway out of one life and not fully in another. Gardaí responded. The body was taken to Sligo University Hospital, and what began as an unidentified death quickly became something else. Because this man had not simply appeared on that beach. Over the previous 4 days, he had moved through Sligo in full view of cameras and passersby. He had checked into a hotel. He had taken buses and taxis. He had spoken to staff. Yet somehow, when police began pulling the threads together, the man they were tracing did not seem to exist at all. The trail begins on Friday, June 12th. CCTV in Derry bus station captured a tall, thin man with short gray hair and glasses. He was carrying 2 black bags, one a soft holdall, the other a shoulder-style bag. He was looking for the 4 p.m. bus to Sligo. 2 hours and 28 minutes later, cameras in Sligo showed him arriving there. A stranger had entered town in broad daylight, and no one then had any reason to remember him. From the bus station, he took a taxi to the Sligo City Hotel. He checked in around 6:52 p.m., paying cash for a 3-night stay. He signed the register with the name Peter Bergmann and wrote down an address in Vienna, Austria. He was not asked for identification. A single man, quiet, polite enough, passing through, but the name was false. The address was false. The street he wrote down did not exist in Vienna, and the postal code did not fit Vienna's real system. Even his surname looked slightly off, ending with 2 N's, rather than the usual German spelling. Witnesses at the hotel remembered a man who seemed Central European, possibly German or Austrian, speaking English with an accent. He was slim, well-groomed, neatly dressed, and in no obvious state of panic. Nothing about him suggested chaos. If anything, he gave the impression of control, the kind of control that later became the most haunting feature of the entire case. Because once Peter Bergmann was in room 705, a pattern began to form. Over the next 3 days, CCTV recorded him leaving the hotel again and again with a purple plastic bag that was clearly full, and every time he returned, the bag was empty or gone. 13 times in total, he walked out carrying something and came back carrying nothing. No one saw where he disposed of the contents. No camera captured the moment. That detail changes everything. This was not a man who simply died unidentified. This was a man who seemed to be removing himself piece by piece before death. If those bags contained clothing, papers, medication, photographs, travel documents, or anything else that could connect him to a former life, then he was not just hiding, he was erasing. And what makes it stranger is that he was never seen doing it. Investigators later said he was never caught on CCTV throwing anything away, never clearly seen posting mail, never seen meeting anyone, and never seen using a mobile phone. In a town covered by cameras, he moved like someone aware of where the blind spots were. That does not prove special training, but it does suggest deliberation. On Saturday, he walked to the main post office and bought a batch of international rate stamps, along with airmail stickers. That simple act opened another door in the mystery. Did he send letters? To whom? Farewells, instructions, apologies, legal documents, a final explanation. Police obtained post office footage, but a technical issue meant key video was lost before they could confirm whether he had actually mailed anything. That missing footage matters because the stamps are one of the few signs that Peter Bergmann may have been communicating with someone. If he sent letters, they might have been the last bridge between his real life and his final days in Sligo. If he did not send them, then even this apparent clue becomes another gesture toward meaning that goes nowhere. By Sunday, the mystery had shifted toward the coast. With a map in hand, he approached a taxi driver and asked about a place to swim. He pointed toward Strandhill, but the driver suggested Ross's Point instead, a quieter place with long sandy beaches. The passenger agreed and sat in the front. During the drive, he chatted enough to say he was from Austria. The driver noticed a distinctive gold tooth. When they reached Ross's Point, the man did something unexpected. He did not get out and swim. The driver showed him the two beaches, stopped at the car park, and waited. Instead of stepping onto the sand, the passenger asked to be taken back to the bus station in Sligo. It feels, in hindsight, less like a leisure trip and more like reconnaissance, as if he wanted to see the place before coming back alone. That Sunday trip is one of the clearest signs that Ross's Point may not have been an accidental destination. He sought out a beach, he inspected it, he asked about buses, then he returned to town. If his death had been planned, this was the moment he may have been choosing the stage for it. If it had not been planned, then his behavior becomes harder to explain, not easier. On Monday, June 15th, he asked for a late checkout. Just after 1 p.m., he returned his key and left the hotel wearing a pale blue long-sleeved shirt, black tank top, dark trousers, and black leather jacket. He was carrying 3 bags, the shoulder bag, the holdall from his arrival, and the now familiar purple plastic bag. Then, between the hotel and the bus station, one of those bags vanished. At 1:32 p.m., cameras caught him at the bus station. The holdall he had arrived with was gone. No witness reported seeing where he left it. No one came forward, saying they found it. If that bag contained the bulk of his possessions, then by this point, he had likely stripped his life down to almost nothing. Not a visit, a reduction. He bought a cappuccino and a toasted sandwich in the station cafe. He sat at a table beside a woman he did not speak to. At some point, while sitting there, he took a piece of paper from his pocket, wrote something on it, and then tore it up. Another message that was never recovered. Soon after, he asked depot staff which bay the Ross's Point bus would leave from. There were later buses, but he seemed focused on the 2:40 service. He had no hotel booking there, no known appointment, no visible beach equipment. Staff later said he looked more like a man on business than a man heading for a swim, more stressed or in pain than relaxed. The bus reached Ross's Point around 3 p.m. that afternoon was mild, reaching about 17 degrees, and plenty of people were at the beach. Someone later saw him at 4 p.m. with a black bag over his shoulder. At 5 p.m., he was seen near the yacht club. He was present, visible, moving through a public place in daylight. Yet even here, no interaction of consequence ever materialized. He remained on the edge of everyone else's day. As evening fell, witnesses continued to notice him. Around 9:10 p.m., 2 women saw him carrying something, though they were unsure what. Around 9:30 p.m., a married couple watching the sunset saw him moving along the shore with his trouser legs rolled up. The husband later described his gait as deliberate, almost ritualistic, stepping through the water with unusual care. Something about the way he moved stayed with the witnesses, not frantic, not drunken, not confused, but measured, as though he were following a private sequence that made sense only to him. On a beach full of ordinary gestures, his movement felt out of place enough to be remembered. Later that night, members of the public saw him again with a plastic bag. At 10:30 p.m., he was seen wearing his glasses. At 11 p.m., another sighting put him still carrying that bag. At 11:10, he was seen sitting on a bench overlooking the first beach. He was not hidden, he was simply there, passing the final hours of his life in plain sight. The final confirmed sighting came at 11:50 p.m. A woman saw him walking by the edge of the incoming ocean with a plastic bag in hand. High tide was due within half an hour. After that, there is nothing. No final note, no final witness, no camera, just a gap between the last sighting and the moment his body was found the next morning. When Gardaí searched the area after the body was discovered, they found the clothing he had worn the previous day folded carefully on a rock, shoes first, socks tucked into the shoes, trousers, a black sleeveless jumper jacket, belt. Not scattered, not abandoned in haste, placed in order. It looked less like panic than preparation, a quiet undressing before entering the sea, or something intended to resemble that. And then, investigators found another disturbing pattern. The labels had been cut from the clothes found on the rocks, just as labels had been cut from the garments he was wearing when discovered. Not every brand clue was erased, but many were. It was one more example of the same instinct visible all through his stay. Remove identifiers, reduce traceability, leave less behind than expected. What remained in his pockets was sparse and strangely curated. Gardaí recovered cash, tissues, aspirin made by Bayer, sticking plasters, and an unopened bar of hotel soap. There was no wallet, no passport, no tickets that answered where he had come from before Derry, no phone, no keys that opened any obvious door to a former life. Even his glasses were missing. Also missing were the stamps he had bought, the pale blue shirt he wore when leaving the hotel, the black shoulder bag, and the purple plastic bag. The objects that might have explained him had vanished. What remains is a shell of evidence around a missing center. Then came the autopsy, and with it perhaps the most important turn in the whole case. The pathologist found no sign of classical saltwater drowning. That does not mean the sea played no role, but it means the straightforward explanation collapsed. The body had washed up on a beach, yet drowning was not the cause of death. The scene was misleading, or at least incomplete. Instead, the immediate cause of death was acute cardiac arrest, and the pathologist found something else. The man had advanced prostate cancer that had spread to his bones, chest, and lungs. The prognosis was bleak, measured in weeks at most. He was also found to have heart disease, and later reporting said he had suffered previous heart attacks. Whatever else he was a seriously ill man nearing the end of his life. That discovery changes how the entire story feels. If Peter Bergmann knew he was dying, then many of his actions take on a grim coherence. A false name, removed labels, missing baggage, possible letters, a solitary trip to the coast. The behavior starts to resemble not a random spiral, but a controlled departure. Not necessarily to spare others pain, but perhaps to deny them access, or to deny the system an easy way to put him back where he came from. It is tempting to call him a spy, an ex-soldier, or a fugitive with elite tradecraft because of the CCTV blind spots and the self-erasure, but the record does not prove any of that. One Garda speculated he may have had some kind of training, but that remains exactly what it is, speculation. The facts are eerie enough without turning him into a thriller character. People sometimes imagine such a choice as romantic or poetic. In reality, it feels colder than that. It means somewhere, perhaps in Germany or Austria, there may have been people who never learned where he went, or perhaps they did, through letters we have never seen. His physical details are among the few fixed things in this story. He was about 178 centimeters tall, slim, gray-haired, blue-eyed, and had a distinctive gold tooth. He also had extensive dental work. These are the kinds of things that usually tether an unidentified person back to a name. Dentists remember unusual work. Families remember a gold tooth. Former colleagues remember a certain face. Yet no identification has ever held. That may be the most unnerving aspect of all. Not that he hid himself, but that he succeeded. He did not die in a wilderness where no one would ever find him. He died in 2009 in a town with buses, hotels, CCTV, staff, receipts, and police. He left a face on camera. He left a body. He left a sequence. And still, he managed to cross the final threshold without his true name following him. Investigators in Sligo spent thousands of hours on the case. At one point, around 10 people were working it. Interpol circulated the images. The body remained unclaimed. In September 2009, the man known as Peter Bergmann was buried in an unmarked grave in Sligo Cemetery, with only 6 people attending the funeral. Even years later, the case did not close. Gardaí renewed public appeals, and in 2023 and 2025, fresh awareness campaigns were launched through Locate International, including new forensic depictions and represented CCTV footage. The core truth remained unchanged. After more than 14 years, the identity of Sligo Man had still not been confirmed. A mystery once local had become international, but not solved. So who was Peter Bergmann? A man escaping scandal, a husband shielding a family, a solitary traveler refusing the hospital ending waiting for him at home, a person with military habits, a man who mailed final letters before walking into the Atlantic. What we do know is enough to disturb. He arrived under a false name. He paid cash. He gave a false Vienna address. He disposed of belongings in ways nobody could track. He bought stamps that may or may not have carried final messages. He scouted Ross's Point, returned there the next day, and spent his last recorded hours moving deliberately along the tide line before dying of a heart attack rather than drowning. To erase yourself so thoroughly that your grave remains unnamed is not just mystery. It is loneliness made procedural. A life narrowed into a few belongings, a fake signature, a bus ride, a folded set of clothes, and a final walk by dark water. Maybe somewhere, someone received a letter from Ireland in June 2009 and understood exactly what it meant. Maybe a family recognized the face and chose silence. Maybe no one saw the appeals who needed to. Or maybe Peter Bergmann succeeded beyond what even he imagined, and the true version of him vanished long before the body reached the shore. And maybe that is the cruelest line in the whole story. He worked so carefully to leave almost nothing. Yet what he did leave has kept people staring into this case for years, trying to reverse a disappearance that may have been the only thing he ever truly wanted.